Hi everyone, one of the comments that I keep on getting on all the videos is what are the wheel settings for the drifting? So in this video, I'm going to show you what my current settings are and how am I getting the cars to drift the way I'm getting them to drift in Forza Horizon 5 using the Fanatec CSL direct drive wheel setup that I have with 8 Newton meter power. Now before we hop into the settings, let me tell you a few things that we have to think about. When you're drifting, obviously one of the first things you have to think about is the car. I'm finding personally that any car that has 1,000+ horsepower and that has drift suspension and drift tires and is a rear wheel drive, you can get that baby to drift pretty nicely in this game. Now, after the car, obviously, is the settings. If you have the right car, especially if you have a Formula Drift car and you still can't get it to drift as nicely as you want with a wheel, that's not your fault. That is the settings. Now, there are two types of settings, or I should say two sets of settings. There's a set of settings that is related to the Fanatec Control Panel app, and then there's a set of settings that is called the in-game settings, which are the Forza Horizon 5 in-game settings. So let me pause the game here and I'll show you what my advanced settings look like, because that's really the main crux of this video. Here we go. So here are the difficulty settings that I was talking about before, and you'll notice that for braking and for steering, these are the two main settings that you want to tweak. Braking, you can't have anti-lock. Steering, you gotta turn it to simulation. And then for traction and stability control, you need to turn these off. Next up, we want to go to the advanced controls. Now here, we have a long list of settings. However, we're not changing everything. In fact, we're only really changing 4 or 5 things. And I'll tell you those 4 or 5 things only. Everything I'm leaving as is, except the first thing that I changed is the deceleration axis dead zone outside to 90. Now it says the larger this dead zone, the less the brake will need to be pressed for the car to brake as sharply as possible. We want our brakes to be a little bit more responsive, especially if you're using a handbrake, and that's why we're lowering this down a little bit. After the deceleration axis dead zone outside, we leave everything else alone. Vibration scale is a preference, but the first main thing you want to change out of 3 big things is the force feedback scale. You want to drop that down to 0.6. Center spring, drop that down to 0.6. Wheel damper scale, drop that down to 0.6. Now these 3, if you have the 5 Newton meter, I had them at 0.5 and it worked really, really nicely. For the 8 Newton meter, I raised it up just a little bit to 0.6 and it's been perfect. Next up, we also changed the mechanical trail scale and the force feedback minimum force. So trail scale goes to 1.3 from 1.0. and the force feedback minimum force also goes to 1.1 from 1.0. Once you have these, you're all set. Now you are noticing the road feel scale I have down, the off-road feel scale I have down. Those are just preferences. They don't affect the drifting. Once you have all those settings in place, it should drift real nice and smooth, and the wheel should feel tight, but not hard. It'll feel like there's a lot of force feedback, but it won't feel like it's not buttery smooth. And as you're drifting, the wheel's gonna end up doing most of the work, and you just gotta make sure you transition the car at the right times and use the acceleration at the right moments and the right amount. And if you have the handbrake, it gets even easier and even better, I would say. Because even if you miss a transition or you mess it up, you can use the e-brake, in this case the handbrake, to fix that transition and come right back. And that's all there is to it. Now after this bend, I'm going to go ahead and show you the Fanatec Control Panel settings, because those are settings that are also very, very important. And those are settings that do need to be tweaked a little bit to get the results that I have. And obviously for everybody, things are going to be a little bit different. Your own knowledge of drifting and your own knowledge style of play obviously also impacts some of these settings. So you might still have to tweak a little bit, but I find these settings to be really, really perfect for the kind of driving that I do and the way in which I play. And for Formula Drift cars, these settings work just perfectly. And as they say, the proof is in the pudding. Bomb. So we're all set now. Let's go into the Fanatec Control Panel and see what those settings are all about. So here's the Fanatec Control Panel. I'm on version 2.5. I have the PC driver 468. And the only screen that we care about is the tuning menu screen. And as you can see, this is the setting that I'm working with. I'm on setup 4 right now, and setup 4 is my drift setup. Setup 5 is my race setup, and they're not very different because I don't like to change too much. For setup 5, when I go racing, I do turn the damper back up so I can feel a little bit more of that tightness and grip in the wheel. Now, setup 4, let's start from the beginning. It's 8 Newton meters, obviously. The sensitivity, which is the wheel rotation, is at 1080. I started with like 800, and I slowly moved up to 1080. Took me about 6 months of trial and error to try to get up eventually to 1080 because I also had to learn how to drift. So while I was learning, I kept the rotation a little bit lower. I felt it was a little bit easier. And then I slowly increased it to get to the levels that most people like to drift in, which is the 1080. Force feedback is 100%. Force feedback scale is peak. Natural damper is changed significantly all the way down to 7%. That's what makes your steering wheel very soft and smooth. If you look around, if you look at my wheel right now, it's very easy to just swing around. You can turn it down even more actually, but I think 7% is good for me because I like a little bit of tightness and not a completely free-flowing wheel. The feeling of tightness does give me confidence in control, so I like to keep it at 7%. 7% is really very low, but it does help with drifting, and it creates that freely spinning wheel with enough force to still feel like you still control the wheel. Then in natural friction and inertia, we're not touching that at all. Keep that off. Interpolation filter, bring it down to 4. This is usually at 11, but we don't need any extra filters. Bring it down all the way to 4. I mean, I haven't brought it down lower than 4, but higher than 4 just felt like the steering was starting to do more things that I didn't need, too much feeling that I didn't want. So the 4 is the right number. Force effect intensity, keep it at 100%. Force effect strength, keep it 100%. And then the spring effect and the damper effect, these are, again, extra filters that are being layered on to create certain sensations and stuff to make you feel that realism. And some of it is just unnecessary for drifting, so we turn these last 2 off. So once again, to recap, it's the wheel rotation, which is the sensitivity that we changed, the damper that we changed, and the interpolation filter that we brought down. And we did turn off inertia and friction as well. Everything else, I think, pretty much is standard setup. If you look at the standard setup, when I go to auto, that's what we have. We do have the other filters on, like from the bottom up, damper and spring effect strength. Those things are turned on to 100%. I turned those off for my drift setup. Take a picture of this, and if you still feel like it's not working for you, here in the Fanatec Control Panel app, the only setting I would recommend that you tweak around and play around with is the natural damper. Leave everything else alone. I would tweak that up or down depending on your preference, but try to start with these settings and see where that takes you. So there you go. We just went over all the settings. Hopefully this will get you going sideways smoothly without issues. And if that helped you out, please give me a sub and let me know what you think about this. And also share your questions or comments in the comment section, and I'll try to respond as much as I can and try to help you out if you're experiencing any further issues. But remember, it all starts with the car. Make sure your car is 1,000 horsepower, rear-wheel drive, Formula Drift ideally. Once you have those things checked off, drift suspension, drift tires, then the only thing you really need to worry about is the settings. And for settings, we always start with difficulty settings. We turn off all our assists and we turn on simulation driving. Once we have the car and we're done with the difficulty settings, the third thing to do is to go to your advanced control settings and tweak those numbers, starting with the deceleration dead zone. Use the numbers that I gave you, and once those settings are all done, go over to your Fanatec Control Panel. Once your Fanatec Control Panel settings look like mine, go ahead and give it a try. And all I can say after that is good luck, happy drifting, and let me know how it went. Peace. Ooh, almost was there. See you in the next one. Peace.